Month celebration. My name is Nicole Hutchison. We're about to have a lot of fun today. Our conversation will focus on the impact and importance of celebrating the African American history and experience, continuing the story of those who came before us, also while celebrating the sheroes and heroes in sports and beyond, some of which we have in studio today, so we're gonna have a lot of fun with them. We're so excited for you all to join us today, regardless of your background, because Heritage Month is for everyone. So if you're joining us via Zoom, make sure to shout out your school. We would love to hear from you all. But before I move on to our guests, I want to introduce myself again. Like I mentioned, my name is Nicole Hutchison. I'm a proud alum and a graduate of Howard University, the illustrious Howard University. And I went on to get my first job in sports in Alexandria, Louisiana, covering LSU, landed in Lexington, Kentucky, covering Kentucky athletics. And now, by the grace of God, I'm here covering the Dallas Cowboys. Shout out to my big sis, Haley Sutton, who was the Dallas Cowboys team reporter last year, and Derek, who obviously gave me this lovely opportunity. But I'm going to move on to our guests and let you guys introduce yourselves. We'll start off with Derek.
My name is Derek Eagleton. I am the Vice President of Media and Content with the Cowboys. That means I basically run all the content that we produce for our television shows, radio, website, mobile app, connected TV, social media, you name it. I've been doing this now. This will be my 25th season. And when I got here, Troy Aikman was still the quarterback and Emmitt Smith was still running back. So I've been here quite a while, been doing this for quite a while, and love every day that I get this opportunity.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, and I'm Tony Dixon. I actually was here with Derek early in the game. I was drafted in 2001, second round from University of Alabama. Today, I'm a national sales director for a CPG Fortune 50 company. I also have a nonprofit, Tony Dixon Foundation.
And KayDianna.
Hey y'all, I'm KayDianna. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. I graduated from Texas Christian University with a degree in news and media studies and a minor in film and television. And now I'm here on the Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders. This is my third season and I love every single minute of it. I was not here with y'all, but it's been pretty good so far. We just need that Super Bowl win soon.
Yeah.
All right, next up, Jalen Brooks.
Yeah, so my name is Jalen Brooks. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I went to the University of South Carolina. First 2 years was at Wingate University. I got drafted here last year in the 7th round, so this is my rookie year, and I also graduated from South Carolina with a sports and entertainment management degree and started my master's, so thank you.
Awesome. Well, next up in our program, I just want to say that we'll have a few poll questions for the student audience. So when you see the questions pop up on your screen, make sure to answer them. We'll briefly have an open discussion regarding those with our guests. The first 2 questions do not have a right or wrong answer, but the last one will test your Cowboys knowledge. So we're going to get to that in a few seconds. The first question: who, in your opinion, has had the greatest impact as a figure in Black history, shaping your current experience in society? There's Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, or Malcolm X.
You know, I would actually say Harriet Tubman. I think the natural inclination is Dr. King. Obviously, he has a holiday, right?
Yeah.
He has an actual holiday named after him. But I look at what Harriet Tubman did. I mean, on a day-to-day basis, she had a responsibility, a self-appointed responsibility of taking people from slavery to freedom. And at any moment, if she would have been caught doing this, she probably dies. Like, she probably dies right there on the spot. And that level of bravery and courage, I think, is inspirational. It's inspirational for me. I think it should be inspirational for all of us. As you see things in society, as you see injustices, no matter what the consequence may be, we have responsibility to step up and not just talk about it, but do something about it. That was the beautiful part about Harriet Tubman. She wasn't talking about it. She wasn't making speeches. She was doing it. She was actually rolling up her sleeves and getting out there and freeing people, which to me is huge. I think that would be my answer.
What about you, Tony?
You know, I'm an underdog guy, right? So I think, as Derek pointed out, you know, you always have a leader, and that leader is always leading a group into something. But it's all the people behind that leader, right? Without them, without the followers, if you will, being behind that leader, no one would have ever, this journey would never have completed, right? So when I think about all of those, I think about my father, I think about my grandmother, I think about my granddad, all of those that were part of integration, all of those that were there on the front line, and all of those that I wonder if would I have been strong enough to stand up during that time? And I questioned myself, like, would you be there? Would you have been online, or would you have been one of those guys standing back saying, "What next?"
KayDianna?
Yeah, I would have to agree. Picking back off of what you're saying is just, that's why I would choose Rosa, just because I don't think I could do exactly
Yeah.
what she did and just sit there. Like, she is such an inspiration, and I think we definitely can take away a lot from her, just because I believe when it comes to what she did in today's society, I think in social media, we are so quick and easy to go on our phones and just start talking and saying our opinions. But in reality, sometimes all we have to do is sit, you know what I mean? You just have to sit and take the action behind it. And that's what makes the difference. And that's what starts the revolution.
Yeah.
And that's why I take such inspiration from Rosa Parks.
Before I get to Jalen, I have to ask you a question. Has there ever been a moment where you've had to like sit back and just kind of let your actions speak for itself by just not reacting?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
100%
Yeah.
all the time. Just because, especially when you're on such a big platform like the Cowboys, and it's amazing to have this opportunity. I say pressure is privilege, but there are a lot of things that go on in this, and just like in the NFL and in your fan base, that you can't do a lot. You can't say a lot. You can smile, especially when I'm on the sideline. I can smile. I can wave my palms. I can do my best. But there are a lot of times where I just have to sit back and, you know, let my actions speak louder than my words.
Yeah, love that. Jalen?
Yeah, so I gotta go with Dr. King. You know, in school, that was somebody that we always, you know, we was always watching the documentaries, you know, about his life and his story and everything, you know. And I just remember I got in trouble one day. We was watching his documentary, and then I was just so furious because he was assassinated, you know. So, and I was like, why would somebody do that? And he was trying to change the world for the better, you know, not for his way, but for, you know, the best of everybody's way. So, you know, and also, you know, besides him, my grandmother as well, you know, just how strong she is. And, you know, she grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. So, you know, she was down there, you know, during these times, and just to see how strong she is today, and how she can empower not only me, but, you know, all of her other grandsons and her children. And I just feel like it was just so powerful just to see that at such a young age, and, you know, incorporate everything to where we are today. So.
You both kind of had the same thing, Tony and Jalen, talking about the bravery from your grandparents. What are some stories that you guys have kind of been told about, you know, the bravery that they've had to show?
You know, the sad part is, you know, you would think, you look at me, I think I don't look that old, I don't think, right? But my father was actually a part of the group that first integrated my high school that I graduated from. You know, so that what brings it home to me is like, that just happened. This is within our lifetime. This is not within something that you hear in history books. So I think that's what brings it to bright to me. And not only that, I know we're not going to have time to talk about it today, but I've also experienced those things where I've actually seen the burning cross.
Really?
You know, I'm from Alabama, and I know Alabama had the mystique. Alabama's not the worst. Let me tell you, we're not the worst state. There are some worse, but the fact that I, at my young age, even experienced that at a young age, seeing that, I was no more than 5 or 6 at that point, but seeing that burning, that's something you never forget.
Yeah.
Which moment in Black history do you believe had the most significant impact on the civil rights movement? Leo. The signing, let me go ahead and get y'all some, I'm sorry. The signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which ended segregation in public spaces, the Montgomery bus boycott, which is Rosa Parks, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, or the Selma to Montgomery marches, which is the 54-mile highway protest from Selma to Montgomery. Which one of those played a huge impact?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it and say, you know, while I think all of those were important, the actual signing of the act is what put everything in motion, and what was the culmination of that. Not only that, it also gave a template for others, because the civil rights movement that we went through, and that what we've read about and what we've seen in history, is the same thing that you've seen the Asian hate movement and others use that same template to go and get the rights they deserve. The same thing we're seeing with the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
All of those are because of the Civil Rights Act. And oh yeah, and by the way, had that not happened, I don't think we ever would have seen our first Black president.
Amen.
Okay.
I agree.
KayDianna?
Say anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one thing that should be pointed out is that the boycott, the bus boycott, I think, was highly significant because what it did was it showed in our country, a lot of times economic power leads to social power, right? The ability to show the value of the dollar and what this community brings in terms of dollars can oftentimes change things. And I think that was, for me, that was like really the first time you saw Black people in America showing the value of how much revenue they drive for this industry, right? And I think that's a part of it. And yeah, there's a lot of other things that we have to talk about and a lot of other things that we're really fighting for, but that makes it very clear in a capitalist society how much power is there, right?
Yes.
And I think that was the key, I think, for that particular instance.
Jalen?
Absolutely.
I agree with Tony.
Well, I actually didn't get a chance to hear with your grandmother's story as well. If you have one, go ahead and share that for us.
Oh, so I forgot what I was gonna say. But basically, it's really just the things that, you know, she would describe to me when I was younger and how I would complain about, you know, doing something. And then she'll be like, I don't know what you're complaining about. Like, I didn't even have that option, you know?
Right.
So it was really just things like that, you know, it was very, yeah, I guess you could say miscellaneous in my eyes, but it was very big in her eyes, you know? So just her just keeping me grounded and very humble and very grateful for the land and the soil that I'm able to walk on and with some freedom, you know? So I think that was the biggest thing.
Those lessons paying off, huh?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I'm gonna stick with you for this next question. Which of the following Cowboys won an Olympic gold medal in track and field? We got Michael Johnson, Bob Hayes, Franklin Clark, or Cavante Turpin. Your teammate.
You balling out. I'm about to go with Bob Hayes on that one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry.
Watching this, like, couldn't say me, Jay. Whom were your African American role models growing up? And we'll start with Derek with this one.
For me, it was my parents. I remember as kids, my parents used to always tell my brother, my sister, and I that you live in a world where unfortunately racism exists. That's not an excuse. You still have to achieve. So you have to, if that means you got to be faster, smarter, stronger, more mentally tough, whatever it is, whatever it requires, you know what the deal is. And hopefully at some point it changes. But right now, in 1972, when I was born, she was like, this is where we are. That's my mother and father, like, this is where we are, and this is what you have to deal with. And so I think we were raised with a level of mental toughness to where we didn't use, there was never an excuse. You couldn't just say, well, they treated me differently. They did this, they said this to me. Yeah, it was wrong, but at the end of the day, I still had to achieve. And so I think for me, those were probably the biggest influences in my life, my mom and dad.
What about you, Tony?
Yeah, I go with what Jalen said earlier. I think, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was, without a doubt, the number of phrases that I got from him, the letter in Birmingham jail, the books that he wrote, the trials that he went through. But I think, you know, also you had Malcolm X. I think at the same time, it was interesting to see the dynamic and the dynamic of how both of them created an impact, but how they both were received differently but depending on what community you were talking to. You know, so both of those had a significant impact.
I think for me, of course, it's definitely going to be my ancestors, just everyone who became before me, and specifically my grandma, just because everything that she went through. I also got a lot of stories about what exactly she went through, her mom went through to get me where I am today. And I have to remember that, like, I am not just here because of me, I'm here because of the foundation that became before me. And that was definitely them. And I have just every last cell in my body to be so grateful for everything that she has done for my mom, that my mom has done for me. So.
Yeah, for me, I would say my parents, they had a big role on me, you know, just look, you might be at a disadvantage right here, but as long as you work hard and you work harder than others, and nobody can ever say anything. And it was always a huge emphasis that it's okay to be smart, you know. Our color, it might get discredited. Oh yeah, it's just, but no, one thing about me, I was gonna work my tail off to know what I had to know, you know. So, and that's just something that they told me at such a young age. Cause back when I grew up in Boston, they made sure, you know, I was going to the best schools. So, you know, I was out in the suburbs, and I just had to work a lot harder, you know. So, and that's it. I'm just grateful for those things, you know, because I get to a team right now, it's very diverse, you know, and that helped me get ready for, you know, being around different natures, different cultures and everything. So I'm just very grateful for them, you know, setting me up like that at such a young age.
Jalen, you and Derek kind of hit it, kind of touched on a nail where I want to kind of veer off to. The fact that we have to work 10 times harder than everybody else. Have there ever been experiences that you guys have experienced that y'all have had to, I guess, work 10 times harder than anybody else?
For me, I think the first experience I had like that, and I don't know if it was work so much harder, but I think there was this inherent belief because of how I looked that I couldn't achieve. I was a debater, and I started debating in high school. And I remember the first competition I went to, I was the only person who looked like me, and it was somewhat intimidating. But also because of my parents and how they raised me, I didn't go into it feeling intimidated because I was like, I can compete, I can do this. But I think it was very clear the way people kind of dismissed me, that they didn't feel like I would. Just looking at me when I'd walk in the room, there was this assumption that I couldn't do what they were capable of doing. And over the years, I saw just one by one, I earned people's respect. And it was equally interesting when I would have to go up against schools where, you know, the private schools where these kids had a lot of resources. And I was not only a black kid, I was a black kid that didn't come from a lot of means, right? So I walked in and my suit wasn't like their suits, right? So I was just different. And so it taught me a very valuable lesson. And I loved how it felt when I'd walk in a room and I'd see the look on their face, kind of like, oh yeah, this is a win. And by the end of it, they had a different look. And that was something for me that was empowering. That built my confidence. So that was probably my first experience with something like that.
Jalen?
Oh, I wouldn't even say it was really because of my color. I think it was more because I was a student athlete. And I say this when I'm at South Carolina, you know, it's a big school. Mainly, oh yeah, you're a student athlete. You don't do your work or anything, you know. So, and I just, you know, I always had that chip on my shoulder. Like I started off at D2. D2, you're not guaranteed to go to the NFL. So I always took my school very, very seriously. So, you know, so I always, you know, I tried to sit up front, and I was always interacting in the class. So that's just something that I really took a lot of pride in, was interacting and always, you know, just trying my best. And, you know, I wasn't going to be the naturally smart kid, but I was going to work my tail off. Like I treated the classroom the same way I treated the field. And like I said, I started my my master's. Did I finish it? No. But do I plan on finishing it? Yes. But also the master program is top 5 in the world. And that's just something that I strive to, you know, keep on doing and keep on attacking. So
come on, put in work. KayDianna and Tony, you guys can chime in on this one too.
Definitely. I think the first time really that I just had to come to acceptance with who I was. Because I came from a majority white community. And so looking back at every single school that I went to, I was probably the only person of color in my classes. And on my dance team growing up, I was the only person of color. And I remember my dance director would be like, dance like you're an angry Black woman. And I was like, okay.
Those are her exact words.
Yes. Like I was just like, okay. But it's just one of those things that I would also come home with, like nicknames of Oreo. Like I would come to my mom, and I remember the first day, and because I am mixed and biracial, my mom was like, Katie, do you know what that means? And I was like, no, I just thought it was a cute name, like Oreo. She's like, it's because you're mixed. And I remember just that day, like she had to sit down and kind of talk to me about it, and just like the background that she went through and everything that she went through. And that day I really just kind of grew strength that I never knew I had, of walking into places. I have to accept who I am and be okay with that. Like my curly hair, I remember for the longest time I wanted to hide it. But it wasn't actually until I came to the Cowboys where I was accepted for it. And that's something that I don't take for granted now, especially when I get to see little girls who have the same hair as me and get to be that representation. So I think it's really, really important that we continue to remember that we have to accept who we are, but also be okay with who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to piggyback off that one, but Tony?
Really? You want me to? But no, I think she nailed it. I think Jalen talked about something that I think that's been ever present to me. You have to be present, right? You know, the idea of sitting on the front row, that's presence. It's like, hey, that's saying that I deserve to be in this room. I'm here. I experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, so there's something to be said about that, right?
Yeah.
But to be in those rooms and have people take you for granted, not value your input, or be in a situation where you don't feel strong enough to think that your voice matters.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing. Like when you do get in a situation where you're in the presence of that room, you do have access, you have to speak up.
Yeah.
And not for your entire community, right?
Yeah.
That's the mistake. No, you're speaking for yourself and your authentic self, what you believe and you know how you grew up, who you were around, who influenced you is where those beliefs come from. But when you do get in those rooms and in those spaces and you are in a situation where you're promoted and you now have that platform, take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And cast that net behind you and pull everybody you can up to you and bring them along the journey, because without bringing people on the journey, all you're going to do is look back and say, I was the first to do it, and then nobody else came behind you.
When you talk about speaking up, though, at what point do you speak up and not shy away from speaking up? Because a lot of people are scared. I mean, I've had situations where I technically am kind of afraid of speaking up. So at what point do you?
Yeah, no, it takes a special skill to know that too.
Yeah.
Right. You don't just have the mental throw up is what I call it, right? You don't just speak out of turn.
Yeah.
There's always a place, and I feel like for me, it's always a feeling inside. You know, the older people say it's a spirit moving you.
Yeah.
But there's always a feeling inside that I know that it's time for me to say something. And you have to make sure when you're saying it, you're saying in a context that is making a point that is, you're not, again, trying to show and prove your worth, but explain your worth. And there's a difference between that, right? So when you're showing out, like you're showing up and showing out, I think about, people that get in the fancy cars, clothes, all of that. When you do that, most of the time you're doing that because you're trying to show someone you belong.
Yeah.
Versus just showing up how you are and your authentic self. And that, once you do it enough, you'll realize that that's all that matters. Being your true authentic self will always be, it'll always be accepted.
Yeah, and I'll throw this out
Yeah.
too. I think part of it is you have to bring, as a part of your authentic self, you got to bring your story to the table, because there are a number of people that'll be in those spaces where, as we've all experienced, well, you will be the only person that looks like you in that space. There are other people there that want to know, they just don't know. They've never been exposed to your background. They've never been exposed to people with your story. So it's not even, for me, what I found is it's not even always being the person that's willing to just say it in the room where everybody is. It's having the one-on-one conversations, it's getting to know people and letting them see, my life isn't very different than yours. Here are the things we have in common. And they have a different appreciation for the culture when they have that person-to-person experience. And so I think that's as much a part of it as being willing to just sit there and say whatever to the group.
Absolutely.
It's the personal relationships that develop from that I think are important.
Humanize it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. All right, I'm going to start with KayDianna for this one. What is your favorite part of African American culture?
Oh, that's so hard. We got some good food. We got some nice gospel music. No, but I think my favorite thing I would have to say is just like how deep our roots go into artistry and entertainment. I mean, of course, I'm a little biased just because I'm in that field right now, but our roots just go so deep in it. Jazz and art and poets. We just come from a line of performers. And I think that's such amazing just for other people to see, like, we made this musically, like we have created it, we planted the foundation for it. And I think it's awesome for the younger generations to know, like, this is what you came from and this is what you can achieve. And you're only going to make it 10 times better from where it started. So that's like one of my favorite things about our culture is the artistry behind it.
Jalen?
I don't know if many people, I know many people don't know this, but it's Kwanzaa. And
Mhm.
it's basically the, the celebration of African history. And the greatest thing about it, anybody can celebrate it. It's not like only African Americans can celebrate. No, anybody can celebrate it. And it lasts for 7 days. And my favorite one is Ujima. It's collectiveness and self responsibility. So I just think Kwanzaa is so beautiful. I know my family celebrates it, and it's just a great time to talk about the unity of African American culture.
Tony?
Yeah, I think the funny part is everything that I'm still learning about it, the resiliency of the culture,
Yeah.
the things that were invented by the culture that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And most of the time when I go and look at the history of it, it's interesting because this is why it's so important to have diversity of thought, diversity of mind in rooms, because when you're in the moment, you have somebody thinking about a different way of doing something, they normally come up with a different solution. And that solution today, a lot of things that we're utilizing the cell phones, I mean, it's amazing the things that you look back and realize that our culture helped influence. And that's what I'm so proud of.
Derek?
For me, it's interesting because it's to me, it's about the bond of the experience of our culture. It's like we've all had the experience. You walk in a room and you're the only person that looks like you, and then you spot one other person that looks like you, and it's just that head nod. It's like we all of a sudden we are instantly connected. Right? We're instantly connected because of our experience, because of our background, because of our culture. We know what they're thinking. They know what you're thinking. There's this instant connection.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all you got to do. Yeah.
And what piece of culture, African American culture, do you wish you would have known more about growing up compared to now?
That's deep. That's deep.
Question.
Oh.
I'm gonna go with Derek with this one.
Oh, wow.
Getting it all-
Honestly, I don't know. Something I think wait, read it again.
Is there a piece of African American culture? This isn't actually on the page, but it's a piece of African American culture that you wish you would have known more about growing up that you do know more about now.
I will say you mentioned Kwanzaa.
Yeah.
Kwanzaa was something that didn't become real to me until I was an adult. Until much like later into my adulthood that I became really aware of it and started kind of understanding it more. So I would say probably Kwanzaa. That would be my answer.
Yeah, I would think, and I say this because it's something that's absent today, right? It's the times that people would sit around with, obviously didn't have technology back then, but they would sit around and tell stories. And those stories are unbeknownst to the children. Those stories was actually talking about the ancestral history and actually giving you a base of who you are.
Yeah.
And that, I wish I had more of that. My grandmother on my dad's side, for example, I was 6 months old, she passed away. But to this day, a bulk of the stories when our family get together is all about how she conducted herself, carried herself. So honestly, I wish I had more of those because I would learn more about my family and definitely more about the culture.
I was gonna say the same thing. It's just, even when I was asked to do this panel, I was so excited, but I also was kind of nervous. So I was like, do I know enough for that? And I remember calling my grandma and she just sat down with me and continued to tell me more stories just about where she came from, where her mom came from. And those are the things that I love, just because it does remind you who you are and you go back to your roots and you're connected to them a little bit more. So just educating yourself a little bit more, because I know I don't know everything, but I want to. So
yeah, I would say African American museums, and I just went to one with Deuce early February, and just being it was more such an emphasis on Dallas and like the history of Dallas and how these highways came upon. And I just wish going back to, Charlotte, I was more involved, in museums there, African American museums, like where did this come from? Where did this oil come from? Like this ground I'm standing on, how did this become? So I think it was really cool that, you know, me and Deuce and the media team went out there and, you know, got that chance to actually see like, oh, wow, this is what
Yeah.
this used to look like, you know? So
Have you all been to the African American Museum in DC?
Yes.
Oh, how
That was
experience.
we actually went with the Cowboys.
Okay.
We were there for a game against the Commanders, and at the time Jason Garrett was the coach, took the whole team, and it was one of the greatest and most impactful experiences I've ever had in that kind of setting. Because if you've never been, the interesting part is it's kind of like as you go through the entire museum, it goes from where it talks about the slave trade and you're at the very bottom of it to the very top of it where they're talking about the achievements of Black people. And so you really go through this journey where I remember at the bottom when they were talking about the slave trade and there was an exhibit about Emmett Till and all these things that just kind of angered me. I literally was angry as I was in those parts of the museum. And by the time I got to the top, I felt such pride. Like, man, to see an entire culture, an entire group of people go from that to this is amazing. And by the way, it was really the advancement happened in a relatively short period of time. That was a long time that slavery existed in this country and that Jim Crow laws exist in this country until Black folks actually got to the point where they had some freedom. And so a lot of that achievement happened in that short period of time of freedom. But that ability for those people, which I believe a lot of that was built around faith, were able to take themselves from where they were at the bottom all the way to where they were at the top was extremely moving.
That actually was being built when I was still in school, so I still haven't gone back to
You seem really old. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. All right, next question. Let me start with Tony. Considering the legacy of Black athletes in the NFL, how important is representation on and off the field from players to coaches, executives, and media personnel in shaping the future of the sport and its impact on society?
Oh, wow. That's an amazing, and I think it's great coming off what Derek just talked about, right? You hear all the stories of, and you see all the history of this sport. I actually had, I won't say his name, but I actually talked to a legend while we were at the Super Bowl. And I walked up to him and I said, thank you for everything you did to enhance this game. And you know what he did? He looked back at me and said, no, thank you for everything you did to take it further than we had it. So I think the beauty of that is I spoke about diversity earlier, right? If you have a group of people that all think the same, look the same, act the same, you know, like the same food, you'll never have diverse thought. You'll never have diverse food. You'll never take it further than it's supposed to go. And I think the mission that we have, regardless of where we stand, regardless of the platform that we have, ideally, when we leave this earth, the question is going to be asked, what did you do? Who did you support? Who did you bring up? And did you take that one gift that you had and make it greater? Right. And so as you think about the diversity, if Blacks had never integrated into what was then professional sports, what would it look like today? You know, and so that's when you wonder like the impact of diversity of thought, you can easily go to that and say, what would it look like if it was not there? And I think that'll tell you. Jalen and I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be in your position, right? Hey, you
I want to be here.
But no, Jalen, go ahead and take that one. as well.
Yeah, and I agree. Cause man, you just think I just really how I look at it, I just think so many people wait for us to fail, you know. And I just think we have to protect our image so much, and we always have to do the right thing, you know. Like as soon as we make one mistake, it's boom. Oh, well, told you, like. But you know, so I think just being very cautious of how we move, but I think that's where brotherhood comes into play. You know, we got to protect each other. You know, once I first got here, the vets, hey, look, do this, do that, don't do this. Like, you know, stay out the way. You know, stay low key because they're waiting. They are waiting for you to mess up. They're waiting for you to, you know, take the wrong step. And I just think that this game has, I mean, I don't know, this is my first year, but I think from the previous years, it's grown so much to where everybody wants to see other people achieve their goals. So
I guess KayDianna and Derek, you guys can answer that question in y'all's own, I guess, line of work. So media and then the cheerleading organization.
Yeah, I think for me, it kind of started in college of I really didn't see a representation of me specifically. And like I kind of touched on earlier about my hair, and I wasn't really comfortable with really showing my curly side yet. And so my whole entire life, I went through pageants, did things like that, never saw anyone with curly hair. And so I came to college, I had straight hair, and I remember there was one game that it was a rain game, and then my hair, of course, naturally turned curly. And my coach pulled me aside, and I don't think she was trying to mean it in the way that she did, but she was like, "Is there any way you can do something with that?" And I was like, "No, this is who I am. Like, it's my natural hair. Unless you want me to go out of the game and straighten my hair real fast, like I can't do anything." And she was like, "Okay." And so it was one of those things where she didn't mean to make me feel that way, but she did. And it made me feel less than. And it definitely did not make me want to go back curly. And so, especially going into Cowboys world, I was thinking that same exact feeling of, well, I don't want to feel like the weird outsider with curly hair, but they actually did accept it, and they actually wanted me to go curly. And I remember the first time that I received a notification on Instagram, and it was of a little girl who was dressed up just like me specifically because she had curly hair. And it just meant the world to me, because if you would have talked to Katie 10 years ago, she would have never thought that she would have been curly haired Katie on the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. Like, that is not a thought that would have crossed my mind, because I never saw someone like me on any pro cheerleader team. And so being here today, getting to represent those little girls means everything to me.
Yeah, that's something that I had to deal with too in local TV. My news director at the time had basically said, "Oh, like, I love your straight hair much better."
Wow.
But that's something that, but I grew to love my curly hair too, hence why I'm wearing it curly right now. But no, Derek, go ahead and take it over.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is representation matters, right? And I remember this happened last year. We have a young lady on our staff named Aisha Morrison, and we had her, she was added to our draft show. And first time we've ever had a female, first time we ever had a Black female on that show. And I got a tweet from a gentleman on draft weekend, and it was a picture of his daughter, and she had a whole, like, she was sitting there and there was like papers everywhere, and she was like charting the draft. And he was like, "This is what Aisha Morrison is meant to my family."
Wow.
And that's like, that to me was, it was one of the reasons why I really wanted Aisha on the show, outside the fact she was very capable to do this. But I'm a big believer in the fact that representation matters, because young people are looking at those things. And when they see someone who looks like them in a space where they aren't traditionally in that space, it gives them the confidence to say, you know, I could do that. I could be there. And so I think all that matters. And that's why I think diversity is so important in all of these different roles, because it does create the example for young people to then say, I can do that. This is what I really love. This is what I want to do. And now I see someone who does it. That's my pattern. I'm going to go follow that. You know?
How gratifying is it for you seeing stories like that? I mean, just from seeing Aisha and, you know, everything that she's done for Black little girls, how important is that for you in seeing that?
It's very important for me. I mean, honestly, I look at my career, ultimately, when I'm done doing this job, the way I'm going to evaluate myself will be about how many people did I ultimately help achieve whatever the goals were that they have for themselves. And that be, whether that's people that are on my staff, whether that be people that are watching what we do. It's interesting. I've been doing this long enough now to where I'll go out places and I'll meet people that are like, "Yeah, I've been listening to your podcast since I was young. And now me and my son listen to your podcast, or me and my daughter listen to your podcast." And I'm like, man, that's, first of all, I feel really old. Second of all, it's really cool because, again, you're influencing people. And I've had young people say, "Man, I've been watching your podcast and now I got my own podcast because I just saw what you were doing. So I liked it." Right. So I think that's how I evaluate my own career is, at the end of the day, how many people did I help achieve whatever it is they were trying to achieve? And especially those who are in marginal communities, how many times did I do something that affected them and their ability to get there? And then because of what the platform, they were able to inspire someone else.
I'm gonna stick with you, Derek, on this one. In the spirit of Black History Month, can you discuss the importance of mentorship within the African American community?
I think it's extremely important. Again, going back to what I was talking about, I think that the interesting part is we all know that as you get into specific rooms, specific spaces, we talked about this a little earlier, there are things you learn about how to navigate those spaces. And it would be a shame if all the lessons I learned as I was coming up in my experiences, if all that stuff just died with me.
Yeah.
And someone else didn't get the benefit of that to be able to say, and someone else besides just my kids get the benefit of that because that's what I'm supposed to do as a father.
Yeah.
But other people, if other people aren't hearing those stories and having the opportunity to be able to ask questions and say, I have this situation, how would you recommend I approach it? Then it's a waste. Like it's a wasted experience for me if no one else benefits from it. So I think that's where mentorship really matters.
Tony?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it earlier. I think, the exposure, that you talked about. One of my phrases in my foundation I use is breaking mental glass ceilings one dream at a time. And where that came from really is like when I grew up, used to have, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Of course, as a child, it's going to be firefighter, policeman, president. And literally during that time, people were like, you're not going to be president. Right.
Yeah.
So, and I mentioned that earlier, but until that happened, guess what? Now as a child, I can say I can be president as a minority child. Not only that, because, and we're going to break the ice eventually, it's going to be a female president. But when that happens, females are going to be saying, I can go and be a president. So all of that matters in terms of representation, exposure, and breaking the mental barriers. Right. And the mountains that you put in front of you and saying, this is no longer a mountain for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to break through it through my faith and through my determination and through the support I have. And through that mentorship, because mentorship is going to give me the guidance. That's the flashlight in the dark light.
Yeah.
And that's what a mentor does for you.
KayDianna, I kind of want to, same question, but how, in what ways have you shown yourself being a mentor in the African American community?
No, definitely. I am who I am today because of my mentors. I think for me, I started off as definitely a shy, reserved kid. Back in Indiana, I did not talk to anybody. And it wasn't until I got a church mentor and she really instilled just this kind of, she didn't instill it in me, she pulled it out of me. Something that I never knew that I had inside me, kind of this gift and this greatness that God instilled in me. And she reminded me that I am so much more than I think I am. And I think that's so important even now, just because I have my own mentorship business, actually. Me and my mom both do. She's a life coach and I'm a mentor coach here in the DFW area. And it's so important, so amazing just to get to give back. From the people who gave to me, I get to give back to those people who don't feel like they are enough and don't feel like they have resources to get to where they need to go. And I'm there to say, no, you can do whatever it takes. As long as you put your mind to it, as long as you believe in yourself to do it, you can do it. And I think that's important for everyone to know that you can do it as long as you believe in yourself and you have that support system around to push you a little bit as well.
So do you want me to piggyback?
Yeah.
Me being a mentor or, all right, so me being a mentor, so I came from the D2 route, and then I transferred up and, just talking to other people that want to do the same thing, I just, I think it's very important for me to let them know you have to be a dog. Like I went into, South Carolina, I was third string, first day of camp. Like you gotta be a dog. By the third day, I was starting. It's not easy, you're gonna go in, you're gonna be at the bottom depth chart, but it's up to you to, overcome that obstacle. And I just try and tell people, the transfer portal is a lot bigger now than it was when I was there. But I just try to tell them, look, you can't go on the transfer. I tell most people, expect nothing. Whatever you're expect nothing. Like even like with the draft coming up, I got some guys coming out of South Carolina right now. You expect the first round, expect nothing. Expect to go third round, expect to go fourth round. So you don't get your mind and you don't get tangled up in everything. Then that's when the depression comes in. And I think that's very important of where as an athlete, you do not want to hit that depression block because that can plummet your whole career. And so I think it's very important, the things that I say to people, coming up, just going through this world alone, like one day I'm gonna end up having kids. And I think the biggest part of me of seeing everything was through my dad. I watched him, like he might not know everything that I was seeing, but I seen everything and how he handled, the obstacles he went through.
Yeah.
And, the bosses he had, he might not, he might have had a boss that he did not like, but he knew how to put on a smile each and every day, go to work, do what had to be done, and, just outwork other people. So.
That was some good stuff. That's some good stuff.
Yeah.
So that's all I have though for you. I think we're gonna have some students from the Wedgwood 6th grade center go ahead and ask some questions. I think first up is Dominic Lopez. If we can hear him, possibly. There we go.
Hi.
What's that?
Hi,
Dominic.
Dominic. How are you?
How were you able to find your purpose, and what advice can you give us now as we try to find ours?
How were you able to find
Your purpose.
Mhm. Who wants to go ahead? Derek?
I will say the first thing is figure out what you're passionate about. Where do you find your interest? I had no idea I would end up in the position I'm in right now because, again, it's going to age me. But at the time when I was going even through college, all the things I do now didn't even exist. There was no such thing really as websites. There certainly were no smartphones. There was no social media. I thought I was going to be developing software for the rest of my life because that's what I studied in college. And then got an opportunity to learn, then got an opportunity to learn how to build websites, and then got an opportunity to come to the Dallas Cowboys, which, by the way, I had always had a passion for football. I loved football and played it up until the point where I got hurt, where I couldn't play it anymore in high school. And so to come full circle and then have an opportunity to work in football, doing what I love, where I got to use technology, I get to do a lot of public speaking. It was really about what are the things I'm passionate about. So I would say start with that. What do you love to do? And then try to find a career that does something that's in the realm of what you love to do, because then it makes work so much easier. I don't feel like I work as hard as I would if it was something I didn't love to do.
I think that was a good question.
Yeah.
Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought, hey, Derek nailed it. But what I will say about that is, like, it took me forever to find what I thought the purpose was. And part of my mission is to try to help people not have to go over 30 years to try to find what it is. But what Derek talked about is exactly correct. If you're trying to define happiness through how much money you'll make through a career, you're probably not going to be happy, right? Because it's all going to be centered around that money. If everything that you have in your purpose is around, if this happens, I will feel this way, that's not your purpose. Your purpose is what, no matter what you feel, when you wake up every day, it's something that you look forward to. If you're not looking forward to it, trust me, that's not your purpose. That's just something that you're managing through. And eventually you're going to hit a brick wall where you realize in life, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And you don't want to become my age, our age, and then be in that situation where you're questioning, why did I even go down this path? Because at that point, you may be too far down it to turn around.
I think for me, it's just, I ask God every single day what my purpose is. I'm still finding it, honestly. And I feel like you can have a purpose in that specific day and it might change. Like, I know my purpose when I'm out on the field is definitely to go out there and do the best that I can, but also be a representation to those little girls and be a role model to those little girls. So that's my purpose there. My purpose can be something different the next day. I'm still trying to find that passion that I want to have for the rest of my life, and that's okay. You're not going to find it right off the bat as well. Another big thing that I learned from one of my mentors is that as long as you focus on your purpose, that's all that matters. Because I think in today's society, we look to the right and we look to the left of us, and we're focusing on everybody else's purpose and not our own. And that could be very troublesome, just because then you could be, instead of running towards your purpose, you're running towards somebody else's, and it's not for you. And so my biggest advice is always to remember not to compare yourself to anybody else. Everyone's on a different journey. Just keep on looking forward and find what you want to do.
Yeah, and I'm not even gonna talk about football being my purpose. I'm gonna really just talk about me as a person. And one way I found my purpose, and I think it is, well, I should know, is me just, trying to bring a smile on somebody's face. Like, how can I go somewhere and enlighten the room? How can I go somewhere and make this room better? And that's just something that's always been big to me. I love to smile. I've had the nickname Smiley since I was a little kid. And I get it now, so that's just something that, I discovered when I was young, but it ended up making more sense as I got older. So, just always, like Tony and Derek just said, whenever you can put your all into that, then you'll know that is what it is.
That was a great question, Dominic. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Thanks, Dominic.
Up next, Christopher Franklin.
What makes you feel happiness on your in your career?
Can you repeat the question one more time for us, Christopher?
What makes you feel happiness or joy in your career?
What makes you feel happiness
Mhm.
while doing your
All
career?
right, we'll go with KayDianna. Let's start with you.
Okay, I
Yes,
can start. Well, first of all, I have danced my entire life. And so, of course, I always feel that happiness when I hit whatever I'm performing on, whether it's the field, whether it's a concrete platform, a stage, no matter what it is, I always feel that joy just because I know that's what God has meant for me to do during this time, especially when I'm talking to y'all and getting to mentor to kids as well. I love being able to do it, and that's what I know I'm passionate for. So really what makes me happy is doing what I love. Getting to do this, getting to talk to y'all, that's what makes me happy. And what keeps me happy is to continue to remind myself I'm here for a reason and I'm doing this for a reason. So if you ever lose that happiness, maybe it's time for a shift. Maybe it's time to ask yourself, maybe I want to do something else. Because once you lose that happiness, you won't really find the joy in doing what you're doing that day. So continue to find your happiness in whatever you're doing.
Jalen?
Yeah, I think whenever you could find peace in what you're doing, and that's just something, like I go out on the field and I could just breathe. I'm like, man, this is another day, and it's another day that I can learn and get better. And also something that brings me happiness is whenever I've been working on something for so long, or something that I struggled with for so long, and I finally overcome that. And then I really get like, a whip of fresh air, and I can reset, and then I figure out what I have to do next to improve on whatever else I've been struggling on.
Okay, Tony?
Yeah, I think great question, Christopher. I think, with me it's every day I find ways to have gratitude for the smallest thing. Right. And and having that gratitude for the smallest thing, what it does for me is now I'm thankful because I had the toothbrush to brush my teeth this morning. Right. And to Jalen's point, outside of that is it's setting goals for myself and achieving those goals. And not only achieving the large goal, because anytime you set a goal, if you're like me, when you set a goal, it's not going to be a small goal, it's going to be grand, right? But what I found, the happiness and the joy in that is enjoying the journey, enjoying the steps of the journey, and truly celebrating those things as I progress. So every step forward, I'm celebrating, oh yeah, I'm one step further than I was yesterday. And as long as I'm doing that on a daily basis, it has changed my life tremendously to where I find myself just having that unnatural joy. And then I can be like Smiley, right? It's not my nickname, but maybe I can be Smiley one day.
Yeah, there are so many things that bring me happiness, from the simple things of just watching my kids have new experiences and do new things and achieve things, spending time with my wife, like all these types of just basic things. But I'm kind of like you in the way, Tony, that I'm a big believer in like goals. And so it was probably about 13 years ago when my brother told me about long distance running. I'd always been a sprinter in high school, never had done long distance running. And I'd gone to the doctor for my annual visit, and the doctor was like, hey man, you got some things going on with this cholesterol because you're eating the wrong things, which I eat horribly. And he was like, so you either got an option, you can either start working out a little bit more, or you can figure out how to cut back on a lot of those things you're eating.
Right.
And so I was like, sign me up for the workout. And so I started training for a half marathon.
Wow.
My brother was like, look, you gotta do it, but you start slow. You don't want to run more like you're gonna run painfully slow and a short distance, and then you're just gonna keep adding on to that. And 13 years later, I'm running half marathons each year. And I love it. And the greatest part about it is it's honestly, it's not necessarily the race day.
Mhm.
It's the journey.
It's a journey.
I set out a
Yeah.
16-week plan. I start training 16 weeks ahead,
Yeah.
and I run 4 to 5 days a week. And I have a plan. So every day I wake up, I know what I'm supposed to do that day.
That's right.
And the goal is I don't want to miss a single training session in that 16 weeks.
Mhm.
That's the
That's
love.
the
Like
love.
that's
Yeah.
that's the joy. That's the happiness. Every day when you get up at 5 and you're like, I don't want to do this. But then by 7, when you finish, you shower and you're like, man, I achieved something.
Mhm.
Most people have not done this in their full day, and I've done it
Right.
before 7 a.m.
Mm.
Yeah.
There's some happiness that comes with that. And so for me, it's like setting those bigger goals and then working through the process of
Absolutely.
achieving that.
Derek convinced me to do the whole building your way up to the run.
gonna do this.
I got to 2 miles on the treadmill, right? That matter.
Keep going.
Thank you so much, Christopher, as well. Up next, we have Brian Perez. Go ahead, Brian.
What do you love most about working or playing for the Dallas Cowboys?
What do you love most about working or playing for the Dallas Cowboys? Let's go with Jalen.
Yeah, I'll start off. The brotherhood here, you know, the locker room. There, I couldn't tell you one day that I got up and I came to the facility and I was like, what am I doing? No, like I was extremely happy to be here each and every single day. My locker mate is Dak, and he's such a great guy. And even if I was having a bad day, he'll be like, JB, what you doing? Like, so he always brought a smile to my face, man. So it's really just the brotherhood and the locker room.
All right. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up our program, but thank you so much to all the panelists that joined. Thank you to the students as well who joined. I hope you all learned a lot. Here's one challenge. It's a simple one because I know y'all get a lot of homework. All right. Just go out there and meet someone that you didn't know before. Try to learn about their culture. Try to learn some new things, whether it's tasting new food, anything you want to do. Just step outside of your comfort zone. But thank you also to the Dallas Cowboys for putting this together and EVERFI. Make sure to also follow our Black History Month content. We've got a lot more coming for you all. But for now, that'll do it. Happy Thursday, y'all.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.